Welcome back. As we said earlier, in our intro, we'll be talking about the recent developments regarding the Palestinian cause and the Egyptian efforts that are existed every day to be able to install the situation in a peaceful way, give the Palestinian security rights for the Palestinian people, and on top of all, reject the displacement. Once again, rejecting displacement of Palestinian civilians. We're very delighted to be joined over the phone by His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good morning, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Good morning. My name is
Actually, Ambassador Medhat Meligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good morning,
yes,
Ambassador.
Good morning to you.
Good morning,
I'm glad that you got my name right.
Thank you very much. I was not informed by the name. Thank you so much. Ambassador Meligi, good morning to you. And also, at this time, as we are witnessing a very critical situation. Actually, the whole world is rejecting, actually most of the population, 11 different countries, is rejecting the displacement of the innocent Palestinians out of their homes, eradicating Gaza once and for all. How come that there is a truce that is ongoing right now, an exchange of hostages or prisoners, and at the same time a call by Donald Trump to displace Palestinians out of their homes?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and I think that we are in a very critical position. We are like watching one of the plays of Jean-Paul Sartre, which is the absurd theater, because what we are seeing right in front of us is absurdities. However, we have to deal with it coming from the United States, the most powerful country in the world right now. And I believe that we have to take it step by step in order to be able to swallow and understand what happened. I believe that Mr. Trump has a very good intention, which is he thinks that since the Arabs and the Israelis both are fighting for this Gaza enclave, as he sees it, okay, let's take it. We American, we will take it. So it's not Israeli, it's not Arab, it's going to be American. And this will solve the situation according to his perception of the situation. That if the Arabs will not see the Israelis taking Gaza, then it's okay if the Americans take it to solve the issue. I think that's how the idea started in his mind. However, unfortunately, as you just mentioned in your report, the idea was not this, actually. I mean, the Palestinians, first of all, rejected the idea totally. And then, of course, Egypt and Jordan rejected the idea. After that, the Arab countries rejected the ideas. The enemies of the United States rejected the ideas. And then the friends of the United States rejected the ideas. So we are faced by an initiative that was only accepted by the United States and Israel and no one else, actually. The idea as itself constitutes a flagrant violation to the international law as an ethnic cleansing, a clear ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. It's a crime of war. And moreover, according to President Trump and his declarations, he said that the United States is not going to pay or even to fight on the ground to acquire this land. So I wonder who is going to be on the ground. Or is this a green light to the Israelis to continue what they failed in the first place and to resume their war in Gaza? That's what brings us to phase 2 of the negotiations that's supposed to be starting right now as we speak between the Palestinian and the Israelis in order to release the second wave of hostages and prisoners. So the idea seems very absurd, especially after what we've seen of the resilience of the Palestinians and the steadfastness of the Palestinian resistance groups. And I wonder if Mr. Trump thinks that an Arab country would be paying for, let's say, a private contractor like Blackwater or any of these mercenaries who will be on the ground to do a mission that even regular armies such as the Israeli regular army, one of the strongest armies in the world, failed to do. So the idea actually doesn't seem to be up to the logical thinking that we know of. However, we have to take it seriously because I believe that Mr. Trump or any American president when he speaks, it's not just words to entertain the viewers as much as he has a plan. But this plan has not been elaborated, and according to what we have right now, what we heard about this plan is not going to be achieved in any way by the current circumstances.
Right, because the reason I asked you that question, Ambassador Meligi, is that people who are observing, they need to believe, they need to have some, to acquire some credibility. I mean, the people who are watching the situation worldwide, we are seeing mediation efforts between Egypt. Of course, Egypt is trying its utmost effort to mediate this crisis towards a peaceful solution, a two-state solution that is fair between two parts, and also to secure the land for the innocent Palestinians. But at the same time, there are other parts. There is the U.S. and there is Qatar, and of course there is Israel. Now, we have done our homework. The Hamas is delivering the hostages to Israel, trying to put the papers on the negotiating table, and everything is going through the direction of securing peace and security between the two sides. Then the Israeli and the American side would come up all of a sudden in the middle of all those mediations, and then announce that there is a Rivera that is about to be established on Gaza, and Gaza is supposed to be eradicated. Palestinians should go to lands, neighboring lands. They should be hosted by Egypt and by Jordan and by other countries. They're supposed to be displaced. Talks of totally different, I mean, maps, totally different ideas than what is being told on the paper. No credibility at all. So whom do we believe?
Well, let me put it this way. I think that Mr. Trump, when he thinks in a way a businessman would think. This is what he knows of international politics. He's a businessman, and he has always been a businessman and an investor and a developer, actually.
Right.
And this is how he sees it, very Vera, as you mentioned it right now. A land where people, we don't even know which people are going to live. I mean, he does not say if they are going to be the Palestinians, the Israelis, worldwide groups. We don't know about that. The idea hasn't been thoroughly thought through. That's what I think. However, let's not forget one thing, that this, I could call it extortion diplomacy, that Mr. Trump is using in the American administration. Actually, we've seen his cabinet and his major collaborators. I mean, they're all against Arabs, and they're all against the Palestinian state, and they're all extremists, not very far from the extreme government that lays in Israel. So, I mean, to the point that some of them do not even recognize that this is called the West Bank, and they want to call it back Judea and Samaria, because there is nothing called West Bank, and these are historical land of Israel. So these are the people who are surrounding Mr. Trump. And that's why I even said it on your program once before, I believe that the Arabs, as part of their homework, has to formulate a delegation from some of the presidents and the heads of state, Arab heads of state, to go and meet with President Trump, because I believe that maybe our rejection to the project hasn't reached his ears yet, and that's why we have to go and speak to him firsthand to explain how absurd this plan is.
True.
I believe that this is part of our homework, and since you mentioned homework, I believe there is a second very important part of the homework resides in the hands of the Palestinians, which is to be unified against their common enemy, Israel. It is not logical also, after all what happened and after all these ideas that threatens to wipe totally Palestine from the map, that we are still having two groups that are practically against each other, which is the Palestinian Authority and the PLO on one hand, and the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas and Jihad, and all the other resistance groups on the other hand. One part in the West Bank, one part in Gaza, and they are not unified, and this has always been exploited by the Israelis by saying that we don't have someone to talk to, because you have two groups, two distinct groups of Palestinians. So I think that this is part of the homework of the Palestinians, if they are really serious about their case, and they want really to see a state coming and called a Palestinian state. Having said all of that, I believe that also we should not neglect the fact that Mr. Trump, although he has spoken about some very, very controversial issues and very difficult things, I think he succeeded also in achieving some success. I mean, we have to understand that the tariff threats that he gave to his neighboring country have made them cave in. I mean, we've seen Colombia, who, after rejecting the idea of receiving the immigrants, accepted and took the immigrants back because scared of the tariffs that he is going to force on them. And we've seen also from the side of the Mexican neighbors who have spread around 10,000 soldiers on the borders, and also from Canada, that to the point that he is going to delay imposing the 25% tariff until further talks with the Canadians. So actually, the idea of threatening and pushing around people in some cases has paid off. So he thinks that maybe this will be achievable in the case of the Middle East. However, I think that he is totally wrong about this idea, because in the other cases, it was a case of disputes, regular disputes. None of them could be considered as a violation to the international law, while in our case, in the Middle East case, in the Palestinian issue, what he is suggesting is an ethnic cleansing and a war of crime, and constitute a violation to the international law according to the United Nations, not according to our vision. So the situation here is a little bit more difficult, more complicated, right, and he has to understand this clearly from our leaders.
Right. In spite of all that, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi from day one, remembering that conference that took place after the October 7 incident, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have hinted and pointed out to the fact that Egypt is totally rejecting any displacement of the Palestinian civilians from their homes and from their native land. And also at the same time, he talked about the dangers of liquidating the cause of the Palestinians. Total rejection of liquidation of the, the cause of the Palestinian cause. And at the same time, he focused over the importance of effecting a two-state solution. Besides, of course, finding a solution to the, what was happening, the genocidal war that was about to start in Gaza. So how do you assess, as an expert, the firm stance of Egypt that has been ongoing from day one? The rejection of displacement, the rejection of liquidation of the cause, standing up to the rights of the Palestinians, insisting on delivering the humanitarian aid even through the worst situations throughout the whole process for almost a year and a half now. How do you assess those efforts by Egypt while it was trying to do that alone while everybody else was watching?
Well, actually, this is the historical role of Egypt. I mean, President al-Sisi comes now at the end of a long line of presidents of Egypt who has always vowed to stand by the Palestinian issue and help as much as they can. I'm sorry. Let's not forget that Egypt was the country that prepared almost 80% of all the humanitarian aid that went into the Palestinians, and the rest of the world participated with 20% only. And maybe now it's a little bit more, but this is how it started. I mean, while the whole world was still trying to understand what's going to be the situation and what's going to be their position, Egypt was already ahead of all of them with its convoys of humanitarian aid and insisting. If you remember, in October, right after the first wave of Israeli attacks on the Palestinian, and at the time of the first exchange of prisoners, and Egypt insisted that before we receive any of the double nationality Palestinian who are in Gaza, we said that we will not accept them before Rafah border is open so that trucks can enter with humanitarian aid to the Palestinian. And this was a point that President Sisi insisted on so that humanitarian aid can reach the Palestinian in need for that humanitarian aid. Having said that, the Egyptian efforts has not stopped ever since. And President Fattah Sisi, he has repeated our position one time after the other, without any reluctance, without any changes. I mean, the position of Egypt have always been consistent with our strategic thinking from day one, since 1948 even. So what I want to say is that Egypt is the cornerstone of any initiative, any serious initiative on the Palestinian issue. And that's why we've seen many Palestinians, even after this final last truth, raising Egyptian flags inside of Israel and thanking Egypt for their effort, and thanking Egypt for rejecting the political horizon that was offered by the United States, because Egypt knew that this would simply liquidate the Palestinian cause. The idea is not just Gaza. After Gaza, as we are seeing right now, there is the West Bank, and President Trump actually is thinking, and this is an official statement by the Americans, that we are thinking if we are going to allow Israel to annex the Palestinian land. It's another Balfour Declaration, which is, I mean, the United States does not have the right to give or to permit Israel to occupy the West Bank the way it wants to do it. I mean, by annexing it to Israel land. And by the way, there is one very important issue. Did anyone ever think of asking Israel where exactly are its borders? I mean, the viewers have to understand that Israel never declared exactly where are its borders. And that's why they keep annexing more and more land. I mean, the least of things that Israel has to do is to declare where exactly are its borders. I mean, whether southern or northern or western or eastern borders. Where are the Israeli borders exactly? How come that they can annex Syrian land and keep on annexing more and more land, to the point that we are hearing that over 1/3 of Syria is occupied now by Israel. And I don't think they are planning to leave anytime soon, unfortunately.
Of course, of course. So moving on now to the core, one of the main problems now, which is the Trump policies. The Trump policies inside the Middle East could be taken on two parts. His first term, well, he announced the transfer of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, which has a lot of significance, dangerous significance. That was in the beginning. And now, after he came for his second term also, he, again, when he was re-elected, I mean, currently speaking, starting off with, he said that he is looking forward for an idea of displacing Palestinians out of Gaza. Those are very dangerous two parts of significance, and also the way he is directing the cause and directing the mediations towards a totally dead end that is not going to lead us anywhere except to chaos and a continuous sequence of wars. So how do you assess the Trump policies inside the Middle East? And do you think that the U.S. have sort of like a hidden portfolio or an agenda that is not announced and negotiations are not unfolded in a credible way to everybody who is attending the mediation table?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, in the recent years, we have seen a very strange issue, that there is no consistency in the external United States policies. I mean, when you have a Republican president after a Democrat president, you see a change in the policies of the United States totally. I mean, we had deals that were reversed the first day of the Trump administration. If you remember, the first thing he did was to sign hundreds of bills to revoke and to even totally change other things. So the idea is not about an American policy as much as it is Mr. Trump's policy. So we could have next time, and I'm sure we will, since this is the last term of Mr. Trump, another president who will revoke all what he did. And we have to understand one thing. When the United States is taking an action, this doesn't make it right. When the United States decides to accept and to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that doesn't make it right simply because the United States did it. This is a violation to the international law, and unfortunately the United States and Israel have always placed themselves above the international law. This is something we've seen on several occasions. I mean, if we remember the last thing, for example, one of the last things, of the many last things, when they invaded Iraq or Afghanistan, this was based on their own decision. It didn't have to do anything with the international law or with the United Nations, if we all remember that. So what the United States is making does not always have to be in conformity with the international law, and thus it doesn't make it right simply by acting accordingly. But nevertheless, we have to understand that the United States is a very strong power, one of the most influential and strong countries in the world, if not the most, the strongest one in the world, militarily speaking at least. But at the same time, we have to do, as you said on this show several times, our homework. And I believe that we have to go and speak to Mr. Trump face to face. Mr. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi himself is going to the United States very soon, and he's preceded by the King of Jordan. But I was thinking about something more collectively between all the presidents to select a delegation, among which, of course, Egypt and Jordan, since they are the two direct neighbors of Israel, and other countries also, to represent the Arab world and speak to Mr. Trump directly. I mean, your idea, Mr. Trump, will not be able to see the day. So let's try to find a solution. And the solution is not very difficult. The solution, we have a peace initiative since 2002. Unfortunately, just yesterday, once again, Mr. Netanyahu spoke very directly, and he said that there is no room for a two-state solution. There is no room for a Palestinian state. So Mr. Netanyahu, as the Prime Minister of Israel, even though that he is wanted as a war criminal, but still he is the acting Prime Minister of Israel, see that there is no way that there could be a Palestinian state. So if there is no Palestinian state, so what are we going to talk about if you totally remove the whole idea from the table? So what are we going to talk about? How are we going to have peace?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, just one last thing, I'm sorry, unfortunately Israel thinks that it can get three things at the same time, which is impossible. The first thing is peace, second is security, and the third thing is the land. They want to have the three things at the same time. It is impossible. You cannot have peace and land and security at the same time.
Exactly, and let me add to you finally that happened exactly. The same thing was repeated during the phone call between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who agreed to all the terms of the Egyptian side, and also 11 different countries are also supporting the Egyptian stance. So let's cross our fingers and pray that we could move to an opposite side. Ambassador Medhat al-Meligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, I totally apologize for not mentioning the name. I was not informed with the name at all. Thank you so much for joining us in the breakfast show. We're going to go to a short break and come back to you. Stay with us.